Hello and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I am Ashleigh Early. Casey is still out recovering, as is Brian, so I am on my own today, but I'm not really alone because I have the amazing Blaire Hervey with me. Blaire is a badass business and career coach, a culture influencer, an image consultant, the corporate strategist of PDX Women of Color, and the creator of 2020 Ain't Canceled series. She's an inspirational maverick, making her mark with startups and tech giants experiencing rapid growth, but her true passion lies in innovating for women of color, helping them navigate corporate spaces, become change agents, thrive personally and professionally. Blaire, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Well said. That was a great intro.
Yeah, I just threw it together at the last minute.
Fine, it's fine.
Blaire totally wrote it.
Totally. Anyone who knows me knows that I wrote that.
Which is, and it's interesting, like right before we even started, we talked about the importance of branding, and I was commenting how great that's like a really good intro. And I find a lot of people, especially I think women and minorities, actually find it very difficult to write that sort of a nice thing about themselves. It's really easy to write nice things about your company, about your coworkers, but when it comes to yourself, that can be really hard. Do you find that's something that women of color struggle with? And is that something kind of you're working with them on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a overall woman thing. Oftentimes, we just have trouble advocating for ourselves. So we have a hard time identifying who we are and what we are about, aside from, caring for the people that we care for, because we're nurturers at, our core. So oftentimes we are doing so much work to pour into others. So of course we know what that outcome looks like. We know what their results are because we've done the pouring into that, whether it's helping to build a legacy for a company, raising children, caring for our family, things of that nature. We know what that outcome is. But when it comes to the work that we've done on ourselves, either we don't take enough time for ourselves or we don't take enough time to reflect on who we are. So it's hard to proclaim and declare all these wonderful things if we don't take that time. So yes, it's a struggle. Yes, it's one of the first things that I have all of my clients go through. It's a brand strategy exercise or a brand story exercise where they have to develop their own mission statement. They have to write out their biography from as far back as they want to go. And then they have to cultivate their own core values. And those are things that they can start declaring. Those are things that they can have in writing and put in writing so other people can sell them on their behalf. And it just helps to boost their confidence overall.
I love that idea. And you hear that a lot as I've been going on my own journey with starting my own business. Everyone talks about with relation to the business, but I'm just thinking, God, how helpful would that have been 5 years ago when I was looking for yet another new job?
Right.
Yeah.
And it helps us carve out those opportunities for ourselves and raise our hand for specific opportunities, because we can easily say, these are my core values. This is what I'm about. So this job, this opportunity, this speaking engagement, this podcast, whatever it may be, is in alignment with me. And it's easier for you to say, no, that's not the opportunity for me because it's not in alignment with who I am. So it's really important to do that work early on.
It's got to be important as well to help understand, to keep yourself from talking yourself into something that's not a good fit, which absolutely. I find a lot of women do, and especially in this economy where the narrative is, jobs are more competitive than before. There's a million more people applying. So if the instinct I find for a lot of people is just take the first thing that shows up.
Yeah, absolutely. Either it could be take the first thing that shows up, or no, I shouldn't apply for that job because I'm not 100% qualified. And so, women have a tendency not to apply for those roles. Whereas men, of course, if they see a couple of things, they're like, yes, I'll apply. What I encourage women to do is to think about, again, can you do the job? Is this something that you're passionate about? Is this something that you would be willing to learn more about? Those are the things that are really important. It's not checking off all of the things that are on that criteria list. It's determining for yourself, is this something that I can do? Sure, if I can do it, then I can talk about how my skills are transferable when I'm in that interview. And that's how you start selling yourself as well.
And that's so important, the learning angle. Because I think that's something that men more instinctively are able to do, is to go, okay, I meet these two criteria, but I can learn the rest. Whereas women, it's a little bit, we don't quite make that jump as easily. It's a lot harder for us to look at something and go, oh yeah, I can learn that, even though we know we're fully capable.
Sure. Yeah. And if you think about that too, there are other barriers that keep us from, jumping into those roles because oftentimes in a lot of corporations, they'll accept mediocrity from a white man, mainly because, that bar oftentimes is the white man. And so when a Black woman comes in, when a woman of color comes in, when a woman comes in, we always feel like we can't just be obviously mediocre. We always have to be excellent. We always have to be the best candidate, even though the right candidate is often the white candidate. And so we're so hard on ourselves, which is a blessing and a curse, I would say.
Yeah, it makes us really, really good at what we do, but it also makes us, like you said, less likely to raise your hand and step forward.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
So tell me a little bit about, especially because you mentioned in the intro, like your passion is really helping women of color. Obviously, we're making this pivot in the podcast and with the larger conversations going on in the world. I'm curious, what do you think is it that kind of sales leaders especially don't understand about what the experience is like for Black sales pros and especially Black women sales pros?
It could be a plethora of different things. So much like I was mentioning before, when it comes to always looking for that culture fit. So that culture fit is code, right? And even if they don't understand that it's code, it is code, right? And that's code for, did we go to the same school? Were we in the same fraternity? Does your, brother hang out with my brother? Do you, know my family? Whatever that may be, are things where obviously they don't see a Black woman or a person of color or a woman of color, or oftentimes even, a woman fitting into that mold because they have had the opportunity and the advantage of creating that mold. So oftentimes they're forgetting that. So they're also thinking, and I'm saying they, like sales leaders, but often sales leaders who are white male, they may not be thinking that the bar that we've established is based on the criteria of the folks that are in this space. The folks that are in this space all look like me. Again, we have a lot of different commonalities. So of course that bias is instantly going to slip in when we have an interview because I'm trying to think, is this person going to be a culture fit? And I'm relating those to all of those other things that honestly don't even matter. Instead, I should be thinking about, is this person a culture add? What do they add to our culture? How do they challenge everyone on the team? How can they be a disruptive innovator so that we can increase our revenue and connect with our customers in a totally different way? Because all of our customers don't look like what our team looks like.
100%.
A reflection of, right?
Yeah, it's
to consider.
So how do you handle when you've got a sales leader who is stuck in that, I call it hiring from a place of fear? Because a lot of times if they're not exploring and actively soliciting a diverse pool of candidates, it's because, it's safer just to hire, to clone my top rep, to clone myself. It's just, it feels safer. It feels easier. How do you snap a sales leader out of that mindset?
Of course we can go to the data and we can show that obviously, and I think those were some things that you mentioned before, but companies are much more successful when they hire diverse teams and not only recruit and implement diversity in recruitment, but also in retainment, and then of course into leadership. The data shows that revenue increases, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, it's just a moral obligation for us to start thinking outside of our spaces. And I just challenge them. And it's not to be combative. I don't even care about being the quote unquote angry Black woman, which they of course like to code as she's sassy, she's intimidating, she's demanding. I don't care about any of those code words anymore. At the end of the day, I'm saying, hey, look at our team. Does your team look like you, or does our team look like me? Or not even a blend of either. There was a VP in my life at one point, and he was very firm about two things. He said that he didn't want diversity on the team. That's not what he was looking for. He was looking for the right candidate. He was looking for someone with this degree. He was looking for someone with this background. And when he thought about this person that he was ready to promote, that person had a lot of similarities when it came to their backgrounds. They shared a lot of commonalities there, right? And so I said, well, how fair is it for there to be a woman in our organization who may look like me, but you're not looking at them? you're looking at this other person. That's not fair. That's not an opportunity for anyone to grow. So I just have what we used to call interesting lunches. And I would invite someone to lunch and we have a one-on-one conversation and we just share real experiences and we'd have a real talk.
No, it's so important to have those conversations and to be open to them. And when you got that VP who's like got this blueprint in his brain and that's kind of where he's stuck on.
Yeah.
One of the things I found really interesting in the past few months, I've come to realize is when it comes to changing the conversation about racism, you kind of have to apply a little bit of sales methodology in the sense of you kind of have to be able to figure out, is this someone who's actually going to listen and is open to change? In which case, let's have a conversation. Or is this someone who's just not listening or acknowledging kind of what's going on? Yeah. So, kind of given the environment that we're in, given how many people are out of jobs and how many people are trying to break in, how do you identify what's a healthy culture to join if you are a person of color or a white ally who wants to make sure they're joining an organization that is supportive?
Yeah.
How do you figure out what works and what doesn't, especially if, let's be honest, most companies today the board is all white, leadership is all white.
Yeah.
How do you figure out if that's something they're actively, legitimately working on, it's going to be fixed, or if it's toxic?
Yeah. So, and that's a great question. I've definitely experienced that on several occasions. And again, when I was able to determine who I was and the things that were important to me, I could easily make that distinction. So I'm not just, again, well, do they have a BLM post up today? Yeah. But if I go back a few years, there's nothing there. Back to your point, are there Black folks that are excelling in their organization or being promoted and advancing? And if those things aren't happening, okay, then that's an opportunity for me. So I knew moving to Vancouver, Washington, or to the Portland area, that this was one of the whitest cities in the nation. I knew that. And I moved from Atlanta, Georgia, right? So I was used to being in a culturally rich and very, very diverse and predominantly Black environment. So I knew that was something that was important to me, but I also knew that I could take all that Blackness with me to an organization and let that be my advantage. Right? So my voice would be amplified. And in some cases, you are the token because you're the Black person. So they're going to ask you all of those questions. But I determined for myself, this would be a good opportunity for me because I could make an impact. And that's something that I did with my last organization. I was bold, I was confident, and I started one of their first global inclusion and diversity initiatives. And I left a legacy. And now that company has gone public, and I saw two of the employees with a t-shirt on that we created. So it said that Global Inclusion Diversity Initiative on their chest, and it was posted in Times Square. And so I knew, again, that solidified and affirmed the decision I made, which was, I'm going to go to this space, I'm going to go to this white space, and I'm going to make an impact. So you have to know what you want and what you intend to do with that organization. And when the price is too much, I think Dave Chappelle's father said that. You have to set your price when you're going into these spaces. And when that price is too much or you've paid that price, then you move on. And there's no negotiating, right? You move on and you take everything that you've learned and you continue to build on that legacy wherever you go.
And you just reframed a couple different points in my own career that I can now look at. That's fantastic. I love that idea. And I haven't heard that quote before, so I'm gonna have to go look that up. Yeah, so along that same line, how would you engage, how would you respond to somebody who feels like, I don't want to be the token. I don't want to be that trailblazer.
Yep. Yeah. That's another great question that actually came up on our last 2028 cancel call. So every single week we have these calls, much that you mentioned, that are all about elevating your mindset, becoming a better version of yourself, and creating game-winning strategies throughout every season, any season, right? And so one of those topics was about becoming our own allies. And that means Black women taking the opportunity to evaluate a situation and see another Black woman across the room, down the hallway, whatever the case may be, and amplify her voice. So that may mean you're risking an opportunity to get promoted or whatever the case may be, but how can I amplify that other person's voice? So as far as your question is concerned, we have to start thinking about the responsibility. And that's a Black folk thing or a person of color thing. You have to make that decision for yourself. And when I say responsibility, I'm thinking maybe I don't want to be a token. Maybe I don't want to answer all the questions about Black folks. Okay, how do I get more Black folks in this space? How do I make sure, what can I do to become a culture influencer to make sure that we're creating a safe space for other Black people to come in? Because maybe I don't want to be the trailblazer. I don't want to be the torch holder. But there are other people I can invite into this space who can help here. And that way the weight isn't on my shoulders. So what I say to those folks oftentimes is, you're not the token, you're chosen, and it's up to you to make that decision and take on that responsibility and figure out what to do with those responsibilities. But if we don't say anything, then we can't be mad when nothing happens or, nothing changes.
Absolutely. No, I love that idea of it's not just about like having power, having responsibility, having a voice. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's wielded by speaking up. It can be wielded by bringing in other people, by amplifying others. That's something that's really powerful. And I think something that can be even something that white allies can take the same approach. That's a more, there are places and people where it's easier, it's more comfortable to have those interesting lunches.
Yes.
And there are places and times in your career where it's like, I'm not in a place where I can pay that price.
You're right. I mean, it's about two other words that, oftentimes we don't think about when we're thinking about diversity, but inclusion and belonging. All of that goes together. And I know that makes a whole long acronym, DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, but all of those things matter when it comes to bringing in other folks who are not like you into these spaces. There was another gentleman on a call that we had with white male allies. His name is Paul Brown. And he's the president at Cinder, which is a staffing and recruiting company. And he said, what did he call it? I think he called it like inclusive inertia or something to that nature. And his thought around that was you have to prep folks. That's the other thing. If you're bringing new folks into this space that don't look like them, they've never been in these spaces before, you got to have conversations and saying, hey, this is about to change. And as a leader, stop saying we missed the mark. Nah, we didn't miss the mark. I missed the mark. Yep. I'm the CEO. I missed the mark. And so this is what we're about to do to make some changes. This is what you all need to start being prepared for. And when we start bringing in these folks, this is how we welcome them. And this is how we retain them. And this is how we promote them. So those real conversations need to start happening.
Could not agree more. That's huge. And let's talk a little bit more about that kind of training and retaining, because we see this a lot, especially in sales, where the SDR group is actually fairly diverse. They can do an okay job with DEI, DEIB. But then you look up at the AEs, you look at the managers, you look 1-2 levels up, and all of a sudden, all that falls off. What do you think is key? Like, what are like 1 or 2 things that sales leaders can do to make sure that curated diversity, that intentional, inclusive inertia carries throughout the org?
Yeah. So if we're talking about sales leaders, oftentimes we are talking about these middle managers. So that could be managers or director level. And it would be crazy to assume that everyone that's white or a white male are friends, right? But you all, and I'm saying you all, or white Ashleigh, but you all.
Right. Okay. You could say you all. This is, the intent is clear, and it is us all.
Right. And as long as I don't say you people. Right. But oftentimes white men are in these same spaces, right? They're in the same conference rooms. They're in the same spaces. So if you are a manager or a director and you know that you have been tapped on the shoulder to become the next executive as well, like you have to have these conversations with those executives and with the C-level folks and say, hey, I know you're tapping me on the shoulder, but have we thought about this person? Have we considered this person? They need to do more advocating for. And oftentimes that may mean risking their promotion. that may mean risking their opportunity.
Well, and I just want to stoke the fires here, because one of the key things a lot of sales leaders say they want in their reps, they say they want competitive reps, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're hiring people who are competitive and they're tapped on the shoulder and you don't have that conversation, I challenge that rep, are you really competing? Or are you taking the easy way out?
Right.
Because if I'm going to earn a promotion, I want to earn it knowing, maybe not I kicked everyone's butt, but I want to earn it knowing I went up against the best and I freaking earned it, versus, I just snuck my way in because I happened to have beers with this VP on the day that he happened to mention he's thinking about promoting somebody.
Absolutely. Like all of that. And that doesn't even give other folks a fair opportunity. It just really doesn't. So that has to stop. So those conversations need to be had, but the conversations have to come from the top.
Yeah.
So it can't be even on these middle managers to have conversations with, directors, VPs, and executives. Executives have to say, and folks in the C-suite have to say, we need to start tapping other folks on the shoulder. And what that tap means is readiness. Let me prepare you for. There was an organization I was a part of, and I didn't realize it until recently, but they had CEO awards every quarter. And so there was always this young white male who was awarded the CEO award. And I'm just like, wow. At first, of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, where's everybody else that could fit into that space? But in hindsight, now I'm thinking, oh, that was that tap on the shoulder.
Yep.
That was something that young white male could say. Even if he went to another organization, he could say that I was awarded the CEO award. So again, people are looking at you in this light that has already been shown upon you. You didn't have to earn that light. You didn't have to tap dance to get into that light. You didn't have to wave a flag. All you had to do was show up. And so that nonsense has to stop. And additionally, and I think you mentioned it before, you said it's safe. Another word that I hear all the time is, especially when it comes to HR and recruiting, well, it's faster. We already have a pipeline for. It's going to slow down, revenue generation. Yep. Well, shenanigans. Well, let's start filling our pipeline with the best candidates, the most competitive candidates, all of the candidates, not just white male or not just white.
Well, and it's this idea, and this is something I've actually started screening my customers with. So when I'm looking with my own business, I started throwing this sentiment out and seeing how they react to it. And I've walked away from one or two companies. I was like, nope, you're not getting this. And it's this idea that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity isn't. That you take a truly random group of people. I really believe this. I believe you take 100 people with no sales experience, the 20 people who have the highest aptitude, their demographics should be reflective of the demographics of the US. If we're talking pure aptitude. That's not something that's learned in school. That's not something that's taught by the parents. That's not something that is culturally created. The culture adds or detracts from whether or not they've got that aptitude, but it doesn't add or detract from whether they've got the aptitude, but it adds or detracts from whether they've had the opportunity to develop the aptitude.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, that kind of reminds me of, Angela Duckworth's book and, the favorite word. Grit, but it's the passion and the perseverance. And I just believe that folks, minorities, the underdogs, underrepresented folks, marginalized people, we have a lot of grit because we always feel like we have something to prove. So when you're talking about the most competitive folks, that's an opportunity right there. Like, think about it, right?
Oh, totally. You want someone who's been told no a million times and knows how to come back and say no problem and let it roll off their back and not get upset about it?
Come on, Black woman.
Maybe go, I was going to say, maybe go find some people who've literally been told no their whole lives. I mean, I have no experience that can compare to that. I've had sexist moments. I've had unfair moments where it was based on my gender or a few other things. But it was in hindsight now I realize it was really easy for me to bounce back from that. Because sexism in a lot of ways is much easier to call it than racism. If you call like, hey, this is slightly sexist. Hey, this looks like you're being a little biased against women. It's a little like, oh, especially now after Me Too. But when you call out biased behavior, when you call it discriminatory behavior, it's really easy to for a lot of other white people to get defensive and go, oh, well, I'm not racist. I'm not racist. Some of my best friends are Black.
Right. my friend, my one friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Black people in my family.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I've heard, especially over the past 90 days or so, I've heard it all. And you're absolutely right. It happens all the time. And folks can read this book. I mean, we all love White Fragility. We love Radical Candor. We love all of those books. That's awesome. But if you are called a racist, it's not for you to say, I'm not racist. You did something that was offensive, that was based on my skin, and that's how I felt. That was my experience. So that doesn't mean that paints you as this particular person or your character, unless you choose to A, get defensive, and B, continue that behavior because you want to deny my experience. That's on you.
Well, it's so true, because, and you hear this a lot in psychology and stuff like that, but this idea that you can't control other people's reactions to you.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can't.
Right.
But you can take responsibility for your own actions.
Sure.
So this idea of, okay, I'm not responsible, like in this way, like I'm not responsible for your reaction. I did something that made you feel like I was behaving in a racist way. That's not my responsibility to control your reaction, but it is my responsibility to critically analyze my behavior and go, okay, where did that come from? And is that the sort of experience I want to create for those around me?
Yeah.
Or do I want to learn from it and try to avoid doing that again?
Yeah, absolutely. And what happens in corporate spaces as well, Ashleigh, is, so this is the vicious cycle. I feel something that happened, right? And as a Black woman, I don't want to speak up right then and there, because what's going to happen? Oh, she's being this, she's being that. This isn't appropriate. So then I have to suppress my emotions. I have to manage my emotions. I have to craft my words. I have to find the best time to reach out to you and talk to you about how that particular event made me feel. By the time that I, develop that courage to do that, and I speak to you and you deny my experience, then you deny my experience and I'm visibly upset, or, I lash out, or whatever the case may be, then again, it's back on me and it jeopardizes my career. How unfair is that? As opposed to, like you said, having taken a moment to evaluate and analyze what occurred, what can I do differently, and empathize. Like, where's the humanity? Empathize behind those closed doors and say, you know what, I didn't think about it that way. Talk to me about what can I do differently?
Yeah. It drives me nuts, because again, sales skills. We're paid to empathize. We're paid to think like our prospects think. Why are we not applying these to our coworkers? Why are we not applying these to those above and below us? Yes. It's the exact same skills. So if a client says, hey, I really take offense to how you handle that situation, I don't like how you presented this thing, you're not immediately going to correct them and be like, oh, well, you didn't understand. You're going to take a step back. You're going to go, I'm so sorry. Thank you for that feedback. How can I improve? Right. And then it's actually a conversation, and then you actually have a shot at winning the deal, because now there's a deeper relationship that comes from it on both sides. Because I mean, I can't understand, but I imagine that pulling your guts together, planning those words, finding the moment, and then actually feeling seen and heard, hopefully becomes a more frequent occurrence. But that has to be an incredibly powerful one.
It is. Initially, it's very exhausting. So it becomes powerful as you continue to do it and you exercise that muscle. And eventually you stop caring about whatever that response is going to be. That's where you really grow your wing. You really spread your wings. And then you can start helping others. You can start amplifying the voices of others once you learn how to advocate for yourself. But it's an exhausting experience. It is terrifying as well, because you think that you're going to jeopardize your career. And so back to your point, of course, people are careful with their words when it comes to a customer, because it's going to cost them what? Money. But if I have that conversation with them, it's costing me more than it's going to cost them. Why? Because back to the pipeline. The pipeline is full of white men that can easily replace me. And they're instantly thinking, oftentimes, I shouldn't have hired you anyway. More trouble than it's worth. Yep. That's why it was, what did you say? Safer to just go with this guy. And it's unfortunate. It's absolutely unfortunate and ridiculous. But if I sat and thought about it, I've never been replaced by, or quote unquote replaced by, if I left an organization, or I think I was fired one time a long time ago. I think when I worked at, where did I work? It was a marketing firm, actually. It was the first time. It was like, I think I was selling, what is that? Airline magazines.
Oh,
Like
goodness.
ad-based in airline magazines.
Oh, good old fashioned Sky Mall.
All Love to Ink Publishing. That was the company. That was the first time I've ever, and the only time I've ever been fired. But any other time when, if you leave an organization, I think I've always been replaced by a white man. Always. Always.
That's infuriating.
If I sit and think about it, I can almost, like, every role, absolutely. And I mean, it's infuriating. It's slightly complimentary because slightly. The only reason why it's slightly flattering is because if that's their bar and that's their best, well, you still replaced me with the best and you still didn't get the best, because there's no way that person's going to be anything like me. And I think that's what they forget. When you lose talent like me, you can replace it with something that's similar, but you'll never have the passion. You'll never have the grit. You'll never have the culture influencer.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never have all of the things that aren't only appealing to employees, but also to your customers. So they can have that second best.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Right, it's fine.
No, it's fascinating too, because it's remarkable how many of these behaviors and these ideas, and you could take this even broader culturally. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how many of these behaviors are self-destructive. Mm-hmm. And yet they're perpetrated again and again and again. And I'm looking at, like, just brutal honesty. It's July 8th, and the Supreme Court announced today that it's going to uphold that businesses can deny to cover birth control for women.
Wow. I haven't heard that yet today.
Yay. It cracks me up, because they're like, oh, well, it's, I'm not going to get into too much of the debates on it, but it cracks me up when you look at the numbers for cost, adding birth control, supporting birth control, not supporting birth control, and therefore the consequences of more pregnancies and potentially more abortions and all this other stuff. It's a heck of a lot cheaper to cover the pill.
Yeah.
Every time. And that means less women taking maternity leave.
That
means less women dealing with the medical complications that come with pregnancy, which is a high risk thing. Mm-hmm. It cracks me up. They're like, oh, we don't want women to be mothers, but we're not going to give you birth control. Thank you. Thank you for cutting me off literally at the knees.
Right. And that goes back to who's responsible for creating these systems. Yep. And that's why it's important for us all to do the work. And that's men, women, white, Black, and everything in between, for us to do the work to dismantle white supremacy, racism, and systemic oppression, because it only benefits one group of people. One group of people.
And it doesn't even benefit them as much as they really think it does. Like, it cracks me up.
But yes.
Yeah. So it's fascinating, and it's frustrating. So let me kind of ask a question about that. It's fascinating. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are, shall we say, late to the party, who are just learning about all this stuff. And they're just now, finally, welcome, glad you're here and educating. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you're kind of doing this. You've lived this your whole life, your whole career. How do you keep going?
Oh, it's a purpose-driven life. That's a great question. It's just purpose-driven. I mean, the day that this work comes to an end is the day that, I'm not working on it anymore, which it's more than a passion project. You're absolutely right. It's my life. And what fuels me is, I get texts every single day. I get screenshots from people who are having conversations about me, and I'm goals, #goals. That's because of the work that I've done, or the confidence that I have exuded, or the encouragement or the empowerment that I've been able to pass on to another person, another woman of color, whomever it may be. That is fulfilling. It's my calling. So when going back to what we originally spoke about, when you know who you are and when what you've been put on this earth to do, or what you've been put in a company to do, or what you've been put on a project to do, you can't stop because you feel like it is your assignment. It is your duty. It is your responsibility. And so much like my child, I mean, I have a 17-year-old son and I can't just ever walk away from him. He's my responsibility. And so that's how I feel about all the work that I do.
And now I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I gotta go figure out what my purpose, passion is, because I'm tired.
It can be exhausting, but that's why you have to build up people around you. And that way, I mean, my cousin called me this morning. We were talking about our family and our younger cousins. Like, how do we get the young men to step up and to do this and to do that? And she was like, girl, I'm tired. And I said, that's cool. Pass the baton to me. I'll run as far as I can go until I'm tired. And then I'll pass it back to you, or we'll pass it to our other cousin. Right? Like, that's why it can't just be on your shoulders.
It's inclusion. You got to build that thing. I love that. That's a really good way to just giving all the brilliant wisdom here. So, and you mentioned your son.
Yes.
So I always love asking parents, how has being a parent impacted your sales career and your career in general?
Oh yeah. He was my motivating factor for a very, very long time. So I was 18 when I got pregnant. I was 19, or maybe it was 17 and 18. I can never remember, but I was an 18 mom. If I do the math, then I can give you the proper answer. But I was 19 when I started at AT&T in Louisville, Kentucky. I started at $15 an hour, which I prayed for, and wrote down all of my bills and all of that stuff. And I was like, I was telling my best friend, D'Angelo, we were working at the old spaghetti factory at the time, making the most we've ever made, which was $8.50 being co-lead hosts. And I was like, man, I have got to make $15 an hour to be able to, support my life and my son, because it was just us at an early age. And I started my job at $15.15. I will never forget, or $15.17. And I left making like $27 an hour at 23 years old. And so for 4 years, I was able to provide for my son completely. We had more than what we needed. But I decided to shift gears in my career because I wanted to expose him to more and to something different. And for him to see Black professionals, young Black folks, aspiring to be everything from an entertainer to an entrepreneur to someone in tech to a shoe designer. And he's been that motivating force. But now, since he's about to go off to college, I'm on my own. But he's influenced me a lot. During this pandemic, and I keep looking over here, he's not here, he's in Kentucky with his family, but he's either on that couch or on his laptop listening to me have conversations like this, right? And empower other women. So he fuels me. I mean, again, it's my responsibility, and I have somebody watching me and holding me accountable. So
it's incredible. And I have dogs. I cannot imagine. I'm not ready for kids.
No.
I
wasn't ready either. It's fine.
And everyone's like, oh, you're never ready. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm still.
You're like, I know I'm not ready. You have fur babies. It's all good.
I do. And I can lock my fur babies in a crate when I'm recording and have my little wine while I record podcast.
Wine it with a straw. I'm here for it.
Yeah. The wine is in a cup that keeps it slightly cooler because it's rosé, because it's like 95 degrees here in North Carolina and muggy as heck.
Come on, rosé. You're fancy. I like fancy.
Normally it's gin, but today I was like, I don't have time to make a cocktail. I just need something I can pour in a glass and start drinking.
I have water in my mug. That's about it today.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That was earlier. I was like, it's later. I'm allowed. So, I mean, you talked a little bit kind of starting with AT&T and then making those changes, connect the dots for me a little bit. Kind of how did you get from there to where you are now? I know you just started a new position.
Yes.
And specifically, I'd especially love to hear about a little bit of maybe some of the stumbles along the way, or some of the really formative experiences that maybe some people who are listening to this are going through or have gone through, but haven't. And one of the things I've been hearing a lot is if you can't see it, you can't be it. Yeah. So people who maybe are looking at you and going, oh, I can be that. Oh, yeah. Giving them a taste of kind of what some of the things you've gone through.
Yeah. Um, in a nutshell, I mean, I can give you a few of those pivotal experiences, but my mother passed away, unexpectedly when I was 12 years old, and she was pregnant. She was
Oh,
full term. Yeah, she was due in like 2 days, right? So during that summer, I went from living with my mother and my stepfather and my brother to my biological father, who I hadn't seen in 6 years. So she passed March 20th of 1996. I started school in Louisville, Kentucky by that August, right? And I met my brother, my other brother, by that time as well. So that experience definitely changed my life, right? And just searching for love and all of those things and trying to put my family back together. Again, my son is the product of that part of my journey. So when that lady came in with the Bell South hat on into the old spaghetti factory, and I knew I needed to make some more money and I needed a stable job, all I simply asked her was, were you hiring? I didn't think about the criteria. I didn't think about anything other than I need to make this dollar amount. So even again, at a young age, I knew what I needed and I went after what I needed. And I didn't care what it was going to cost me. I was going to do that. And I was going to be relentless. So again, grit, right? At a very young age, forming that characteristic. Worked at AT&T for 4 years, decided again to expose my son to something different, wanted to leave some drama behind, moved to Atlanta. Again, I knew what I wanted. I wanted to expose myself to something different. I wanted to make more money and I wanted my son to have more opportunities. I left, I did that, right? I went and became a stylist for like a hot second till I realized the money was not coming in as fast as it was in my sales career. So Ashleigh, someone recruited me to do something that I thought would be, mind blowing for a 23-year-old, 24-year-old at the time. And it was a marketing firm. And the marketing firm, it's the way I'm telling the story, it sounds like it's about to be something risque. It wasn't, but it was a marketing firm. But I was knocking on doors selling security systems. Girl,
oh yeah.
in Atlanta, 90-degree weather, from sun up to sundown, from 7 to 7 easily. I did that for a year, or at least a little over a year. I did that from Georgia to Texas, and I was 100% commission and killed it. So again, when you're talking about grit, knowing what I want, knowing what I need. And so time went on, and I didn't mention this, but I hadn't completed my bachelor's degree. I'd stopped on and off, but every time I got a little education, I got a little more money. So I I would get promoted, I would get elevated, and then I would keep playing that dance or doing that dance. So I realized with time, like I was making 100K without a degree. And so that became my story as time went on. But as far as stumbles go, girl, it was everything from working at one of my favorite companies, Veeam Software. And I worked there in a sales role for 2 years. We killed our numbers. We went to President's Club. We did all of that. And then I elbowed my way into training because I wanted to be able to share that wealth of knowledge with other people. And it was time for a promotion. And I was working to become the senior trainer. And the person that had become hired and became my manager, she specifically told me over and over again, you're not what I'm looking for. And guess who she hired when I left that company? A white man. You're not what I'm looking for. I heard that over and over again. But every single time, girl, I was recruited for these positions. I was recruited to work for AWS. And LinkedIn, let me not be their spokesperson, but let me also be their spokesperson. Keep that LinkedIn update. Get those recommendations. Going back to your point as far as branding is concerned, make sure that your brand is on point. I don't know how many people have reached out to me based on my cute green pants and my little scarf around my neck and my LinkedIn picture because they liked the energy I was exuding. And then, of course, all of my credentials. I was recruited to be in an MBA program. Again, Ashleigh, I still haven't finished my bachelor's degree because, again, grit, confidence, passion, bringing other people up with me and knowing what I want when I get into a role. So I hope that's a little bit of my story. I hope a few of those things can help another person, another woman of color along the way.
So other than the systemic stuff, the external things, what are some of the, other than kind of we talked about not knowing your brand and lack of confidence and stuff like that, tell me a little bit more about some of the internal struggles that especially Black women of color face, especially in kind of sales sort of roles that maybe are more unique to that experience that people might overlook?
Well, we're all different. So we all come with our own set of challenges, right? So I can't speak for all Black women. I know that those were all of the things that I was bringing into work every single day. And on top of that, I mean, I remember working for a small cloud communications company that I was recruited for as well, to be their training and development manager. And that was the year that another Black man was murdered. I mean, it happens all the time, but murdered, right? Unarmed in the middle of the highway. And I came into work one day and I could hear another leader talking to his associate about that situation. So when you're talking about things that, you know, white folks or sales leaders may overlook when it comes to their Black employees or Black women, it's things that they bring from outside of work. It's being a mother. It's being a single mom. Oftentimes that's me on both occasions. It's not having the degree because you chose a different path because of your life experience.
Yeah.
It's not being able to talk about, you know, the fraternities and all of that stuff because that wasn't your experience. So being able to include Black folks in other conversations aside from who's your favorite rapper? Do you like Beyonce or Rihanna better? I don't know how many times I've gotten both of those questions.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I mean, this was recently, this was within the past 2 years as a director. So when you're talking about things that salespeople or that white leaders overlook, it's back to your point, inclusivity, belonging. Make this space safe for me. Make it a space where I can grow, where I'm someone you would be willing to intentionally tap on the shoulder and risk whatever it is, your privilege, your, pay, your opportunity to get that promotion for me. So those are, again, a plethora of different things that, you know, we all kind of bring to the table. But for me, it was all of those things. And most of the time, it didn't even matter. I had to deal with those things and suck them up until recently when we can have these conversations openly. So that's something else that they should consider. So as loud as we are about BLM and being Black, you know, Black pride and saying all of the things, we have been silenced for so long. So consider that when we're being loud. It's passion. I think people have forgotten what passion sounds like.
And it's not just that, it's passion that has been constrained.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've heard passion compared to pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You restrain passion long enough, it's going to explode.
Yes. But pressure also builds what? Diamonds, right? And that's why there's so much beauty in what you're seeing around all of this Blackness that's shown from sales organizations and corporations and all of those things. We have a voice. We appreciate you all sharing the mic and amplifying our voice, but we're going to continue to do that work. And they need to see that. And they need to also want that in their spaces.
Yeah. The wanting is the hard part.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be the thing that I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm curious if you share the same thing. I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to see some movement this time, just because the conversations are happening. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've never lived in the South before. And I'm kind of in the South. I'm like North South. I'm the north of the South.
Right.
And I mean, I had a conversation with my neighbor literally 2 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
I've actually had 2 different conversations with neighbors.
Okay.
About some of the monuments being pulled down.
Okay.
And those conversations would not have happened 6 months ago.
Right.
Those people would not have been open about their opinions about it, and they wouldn't have been asking questions in a way that they were with me. So that's like, okay, this is new.
Right.
This is different.
Yep.
You know, and the fact that it's being sustained a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious. I mean, that's my perspective. I'm obviously outside. Do you share that kind of cautious optimism? Do you think it's different this time? Do you think, you know, I like to hope we're going in the right direction.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm an optimist by nature. I'm a Sag, so I'm stereotypical, like, yes, everything's going to be okay all the time. But I also realize now more than ever that it's not white folks' responsibility to take care of Black folks. It's white folks' responsibility to start having conversations about privilege and about white supremacy. Having those conversations amongst yourselves to dismantle that. because those are the systems that have been created to benefit white people.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the systems that have continuously oppressed Black people and people of color. And so then with Black folks, like, you know, it's our opportunity to amplify our own voices. It's our opportunity to take full advantage of all these opportunities. If there's a job posting, go apply for it.
Yep.
We can do more than, you know, be the CEO, not CEOs, but be the diversity inclusion chief officers. We can like go for those roles, say it loudly, call out racism. We should be doing those things. But we both have to be educated on both sides of the fence.
Yep.
White folks need to understand, you know, there's a white history as well. And that's why this thing has been perpetuated for so long. And Black people have to understand, like, all right, again, this is our time. Let's really move into this moment and make sure that it is more of a movement and not just a moment. So everyone has to do their work. It's not always going to be a kumbaya.
Well,
it's not going to be that all the time, but everyone has to do the work.
That's kind of the one thing I've had in the back of my head is,
Mm-hmm.
and I said this initially, like, I'm so excited to see the protests. I'm excited to see how peaceful they are. I'm excited to see the outpouring of all these things. And in the back of my head, I've always been going, I feel like it needs to get worse. I feel like it needs to be more painful. I feel like it needs to hurt to really get the growth, because growth is not easy. Growth is not pain-free.
Yeah.
So there's that part of me that's like, okay, and where's that pain going to come from? Because I know it's coming. At least I hope it is, in a weird way.
Yeah, well, Ashleigh, to be quite honest, like we've been the sacrificial lamb of that. Like, and when I say we, it's just Black folks. Like we have experienced the hurt and the pain and the inequality and the oppression. And so I'm not sure what else needs to happen for, I mean, you can Google unarmed Black men and women being murdered. Like, you know, and folks are just really desensitized. Breonna Taylor's killers
are still free,
are still walking free.
Yeah,
let's be clear. So
there was a man who was almost lynched this past weekend in, I think, Indiana. Caught on video, showed the videos to the cops. The cops showed up, and the cops said, "There's no need to arrest anyone."
Wow,
it's insane. And you know, I think you're right. You guys have again, generalizations. You've borne the pain, and I think that's kind of where my comment was coming from. It's like, okay, it's our turn to get uncomfortable. It's our turn to put ourselves out there and get uncomfortable and risk and get out of those safe zones, because that's the only way we as a society are going to go forward. Not to draw a correlation to COVID. It's like, okay, we can just all be in pain for 3 weeks and self-isolate alone, and then it's done.
Yeah.
Or we can try and make this easier on everyone and go out and keep living like nothing's happening, and nothing will change and people will keep dying. And I want to call this out because I didn't notice it until 5-10 minutes ago. I did not call these the murders of unarmed Black men and women murders until the past couple months. I used killings. That was my language. And it didn't occur to me until just now that I'd made that switch. And that's it. Just even that little switch, it's interesting. 6 months ago, I would have said African American. I have since learned, you know, saying Black. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's that uncomfortableness. I mean, even just making that, the first few times I said it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get in trouble.
And if you did, then guess what? You did. But
and it's personal preference, and it's making the effort. I feel like if anything else, it's like, okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to get myself educated. And if I get it wrong, I'm going to listen to the feedback.
Yeah. But your discomfort could, I mean, for a lack of better words, or, you know, even to, you know, dramatize it, but your discomfort and you speaking up could save a life.
Yeah.
It could keep someone from calling the police because they feel threatened in a park, right? Your discomfort by speaking up because you may feel uncomfortable, like it could literally change a moment in time. And so when we ask our, you know, non-Black allies or white folks to stand in front of and link arms and stand in between, like those are those moments where it's just like, yeah, let it be uncomfortable. You've said it, you know.
It's our turn.
Yeah, let it be uncomfortable. Let it be uncomfortable.
Give that baton to us. we should be running with this for a minute.
And that's the other thing, wear a mask. If I see or hear about another protest about, it's a free country and it's my right not to wear a mask, shenanigans. You not wearing a mask can impact my, older person, an older person in my family, because we are disproportionately being affected by COVID-19, by the coronavirus, because of so many other different socioeconomic issues and underlying conditions. So stop it, right?
And this happens at both sides of the political spectrum. There's a lot of, the farther you get out to the fringes of political ideologies, the more hypocrisy there is. So this is both sides, but I do thoroughly enjoy looking back now at the protests that happened in like Minnesota or whatever. Well, I need to get my hair done. Yes, you do. That was terrifying. But where were those people screaming about government interference and government overstep when another Black person is killed because they got the wrong address on a warrant?
It's just
murdered because of another because they got the address wrong on a warrant, because they were threatened by the color of someone's skin, because the only distinguishing factor they got from a crime report was an African-American male or a Black male. And so they just go grab the first one they see. It's where's the outrage there? That drives me nuts.
Oh yeah. It's just like, where are the all lives matter folks when we're seeing these young babies, our brown babies in cages at the border? So knock it off. Like, are we gonna pick and choose, or are we going to come together and know what's right and what's wrong? And there are just things that are just flat out wrong. And when you are, when there are things that are in place to oppress people, women, gay, Black, trans, Mexican, Chinese, because of all of these things that are happening, stop it. Just stop and do better.
Yeah.
And stop asking me, where do I start? Stop it. Stop it.
As with anything in 2020, you have a phone, Google it. Just you want to know where to start? Google it. Then come talk to me when you want it, once you've done some basics. It's not hard.
It's not. We have, quite a few white allies. I mean, I always speak of Kara Snow. She is the Chief Community Officer at Technology Association of Oregon. She's a friend of the PDX Women of Color crew in the Visionary Squad. And she is exemplary when it comes to being an ally. And it's mainly because she does things without prompt. She will repost, she will get us speakers, she will, take a walk with us if we just need to clear our mind. Like, she's got a whole wine situation set up for me in the next couple of weeks, so I can clear my mind and not talk about any of these things. She's just a good person, right? And that's what it boils down to. White, Black, and woman, be a good person to another human.
Absolutely. And on that note, we're coming to the end of our time today. This has been absolutely delightful. And as we do with all of our episodes, we always like to end with a lightning round. So this is a series of questions designed to be a little bit lighthearted, nothing too terribly intense, just to kind of have a little bit of fun at the end of this. So, first question, what's your morning routine?
Oh, now it is roll off of the couch, wash my face, brush my teeth, do this to my hair, and come over here to this laptop and get to it. I usually get up about 6 or 6:30, and I feel like I'm at this seat until 6:37, sometimes 8 p.m. So that's it. Oh, and I put on, I think they call it a Zoom shirt now. This is mine today.
Feisty personality.
Ow.
There we go.
But I usually wear something pretty cute. So that's my morning routine.
Yeah, I'll say this. You actually know Casey.
Yes.
Obviously through the Portland connection. When she was describing you to me before you came on, she described you as painfully stylish. Which I loved.
Oh, well, I did some light for you today, but this is a drape. It's like a cape all the way to the ground.
Oh, I love it. I'm a huge fan of a statement duster.
The duster,
especially because you can throw it over a pair of like tights and a normal t-shirt, and then like, oh look, I'm stylish.
Facts.
Yes. All right. Pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career.
One person who has had a significant impact. I think I don't give this person enough credit. It was the woman who was the previous trainer at Veeam Software, Heather Leva. And that is because when I saw her, I knew, and I think we've joked about it, but I knew that I would have her job. And it's not because I wanted to get her out of the way, but it's because I could see myself, like you said, I could see myself in her. I could see myself duplicating, some of the things that she's done, but develop others in another way because I had sales experience. And she tried to she was like, Blaire, you're only going to get paid this amount of money. You're not going to get the bonuses. You're not going to get the incentives. But she actually stepped out of the way and allowed me to take on that role. So Heather Leva, I would give it to her.
I love that. All right. What's your pump up song?
Anything Kanye West. Ugh, I don't care. I don't care. It's between Kanye West and Drake. So Kanye West, Last Call, I think it's number 14 on College Dropout. I think it's about 14 minutes, but most of the song is him telling his story, like not his rise to fame, but how he really made it in the industry. And he credits a lot of different people as he goes through through that journey. So I love that story. I feel like I can do anything after listening to that song.
I love that. Now soon to be added to the Other Side of Sales playlist on Spotify.
Yes.
So you can all go listen to that. All right. What's one thing you wish you'd learned earlier?
How to love myself. And I know that probably sounds crazy after everything that we've talked about, but just loving myself from my big, fat, wide nose to my professional voice that I have, to the top of my head and how I like to change my hair every single month, to my curviness, to my outspokenness, to, how I'm unapologetically me. There's a gentleman who said, his name is Russell Lester. He's now the CFO at Calendly, and he was my VP at one point. And he said, you have the confidence to fill a room. I will never forget that. And that's something that I wish I would have loved more about myself earlier on.
That's a mouthful. It's and I'll say and it's inspiring to see. So that's really delightful. All right. What's your favorite sales book or business book?
Sales book or business book? There is a sales enablement book that I started reading, and it actually has a super long title. I wanted to see if it was over here, but it is like creating a world-class sales enablement strategy. I believe it's written by, oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm looking at it over here. I just can't reach it. I'll probably knock everything over. But it's written by a training group, actually. You're probably Googling it. It's all out. What is that sales enablement book? You found it?
I'm going. It's hard to type when it's over on my other side. The Ultimate Guide to Sales Enablement, Creating a World-Class Sales Organization.
Yes.
By the Miller Heiman Group.
I knew it started, yes, by Miller Heiman. That is the book. And also the memo by Minda Harts. It's how to secure your seat at the table, or how Black women secure their seat at the table. So not quite a sales book, but a great book for women in corporate spaces.
I love that. All right. What's one way someone could have been a better ally to you? That one kind of hit.
The word that keeps coming to mind is advocate for me. Advocate for me, like speak up when I'm not in the room, and have empathy. Having empathy. I don't need sympathy. I just need you to understand that when I come into the office, I have laid so many things down, and I'm still professional, and I'm still going to take your legacy to the next level because I'm helping to build this company. So empathy and advocacy. Make sure that I'm in that C-suite. Do everything that you can to get me to that C-suite, because I'm going to do all the work.
Yeah, I love people like, oh, you need to work hard. That's table stakes. Next.
And
all right. What's one way you're working to be a better ally for others?
Listening as well. As much as I love to talk and tell people what to do and coach them, listening and asking more questions. And I'd love to, again, take on these opportunities, but how can I either help someone feel like they should be in that position or just throw them in that position? Oftentimes that's what I do. I'm just like, girl, that's you. Like, that's your opportunity. So helping to amplify the
just
voice.
go.
Just go. And I got you. Whatever you need support with, I got you.
I love that. All right. Last question.
Okay.
What's your guilty pleasure at the end of a bad day?
So this isn't that guilty, but I definitely love a bowl of cherries.
So Rainiers, I'm assuming?
Yes, Washington cherries. Love dark cherries, and I love veggie sushi. So I'm going back to my vegginess and my veganism, if you will, or vegetarianism. And then I love to watch Queer Eye. I love that show. It makes me smile. It makes me happy, and I can binge watch it. So that's my guilty pleasure. That's about it. I'm boring.
You can't not be slightly inspired by watching Queer Eye. I'll say is if you like Queer Eye, there's a new one on HBO called We're Here.
Oh,
which is similar.
Okay.
But it's drag queens. So that's a lot of fun. I discovered that one recently while trolling the depths of the online streaming content.
Virtual streaming. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, Blaire, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. Really appreciate you. How can people find you and get in touch with you if they're interested?
Yes, I would love for them to connect with me on LinkedIn, and it's just LinkedIn. I think the /in, the other /Blaire, Blaire, Hervey, Herv as in Victor, EY. You can also find me on Instagram, and that's BeHer. You like what I did there?
Hey.
BeHer.xoxo. So I have some t-shirts that I'm selling. 20% of the proceeds actually go to funding or to funds that seek justice for Breonna Taylor.
That's fantastic. I love it. All right. We'll make sure to link to those in the show notes as well, so you can grab some more of that stuff. And thank you for listening to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. Please keep this conversation going. Find us on LinkedIn, find Blaire on LinkedIn, Twitter, all the good stuff. If you're enjoying the show, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and especially review on your podcast catcher of choice. And with that, we'll see you next time.